Hey everyone, and welcome back. Ready to dive into some more of those ancient mysteries that keep us all guessing?
Always up for a good mystery. What have we got lined up today?
Well, our listeners have sent in some fascinating stuff about ancient encounters, mysterious structures, even a prehistoric anomaly or two. We're talking about strange figures in Australian caves, those massive underground caverns in China, and get this, some really old art from India that has people talking about UFOs.
Okay, now you've got my attention. Let's dig in.
Right. First up, we're heading down under to Australia, home of the outback, and
Mm,
some pretty enigmatic cave paintings known as the Wandjina.
I've seen pictures. Those things are huge, right? With those big round heads.
Yeah, and the eyes. They're these large, piercing eyes that seem to follow you around the cave. And here's the thing, no mouths. Just these lines radiating outwards, kind of like feathers or maybe some kind of energy field. It's a look.
Yeah, not your typical cave drawing. Makes you wonder what they were thinking, those ancient artists.
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Hmm.
Some folks, like George Haas from the Cydonia Institute, they see those Wandjina and say, yep, those are ancient astronauts.
Really? I mean, I can see how they jumped to that conclusion. They do have that sort of 1950s sci-fi vibe going on.
For sure. But to really understand those paintings, we've got to understand the culture that created them, right?
Mm.
Aboriginal culture in Australia, it's ancient, like 65,000 years old, and they put huge importance on body painting, especially for ceremonies.
So, like, we're looking at a snapshot of their rituals, maybe.
Exactly. And those halos around the Wandjina's heads, probably not high-tech helmets after all. More likely, they symbolize spiritual transformation, something you see in art from all kinds of cultures. Plus, some Wandjina are shown with, well, genitalia, which kind of goes against that whole extraterrestrials reproduce differently
Right.
idea.
Interesting. So the context really shapes how we interpret things. It's like finding a piece of a puzzle without knowing what the whole picture is supposed to be.
100%. Okay, ready to jump across the globe to China.
Lead the way.
All right, so we're talking about the Zhejiang province in China. Picture this. It's the 1990s, and someone decides, hey, let's drain this pond. Next thing you know, they stumble upon the Longyu Caves.
Hold on, they just found a bunch of caves by draining a pond.
Yeah. These weren't just any caves. There were talking 24 massive caverns, all carved by hand over 2,000 years ago. And get this, some of these caverns are huge, like 7 times larger than an average house.
Whoa, talk about an undertaking. The amount of labor that would have taken is mind-boggling. Did they ever figure out what they were used for?
That's the biggest mystery of all.
Hmm.
No written records, no artifacts. It's like they were trying to keep these caves a secret. Some people think maybe it was a palace, but there's no evidence of individual rooms or any of the usual palace stuff.
Maybe a giant tomb.
Could be, but the caves are prone to flooding, which seems kind of counterproductive for burials, don't you think?
Yeah, that's true. Although speaking of flooding, maybe they were designed to hold water. Like a massive underground reservoir. Some people point to those lines carved into the cave walls as some kind of sophisticated water management system.
Okay, that's a new angle. I'll admit, those lines have always intrigued me. But why go through all that effort to carve such intricate patterns for a simple reservoir?
That's what I'm saying. It just seems like overkill for something purely functional, you know? Like maybe there's more to it than we realize. It's like finding an intricately carved box with no key.
And inside that box, who knows what secrets are hidden? Speaking of secrets, our next stop takes us to India, where some ancient cave paintings have ignited a whole other debate. Think ancient visitors, and yeah, even UFOs. So we're talking about cave paintings in India that are over 10,000 years old. And I got to say, some of these images are pretty wild.
Wild in what way? What are we looking at here?
Well, you've got your usual animals and human figures, but then you stumble across these, well, beings, for lack of a better word. They've got these large heads, elongated bodies, and they just look different from the other humans in the paintings.
Okay, I can see where this is going.
And then there's the UFO. It's this disc-shaped object hovering in the air, and some people are convinced it's a spacecraft. It even has what looks like portholes and beams of light coming out of it.
You have to remember, these caves were like ancient canvases, places where people recorded their stories, beliefs, maybe even their dreams.
Right, like a message passed down through millennia. But are we misinterpreting the message?
It's possible. We're looking at it through a modern lens, and that can distort things. Take that disc-shaped object, for example. Instead of a UFO, what if it's something much more down to Earth?
Like what?
The sun. Think about it for ancient cultures. The sun was incredibly powerful, life-giving. It wouldn't be surprising if they depicted it in a grand, even mystical way.
Those beams of light could just be sun rays.
Exactly. And the disk itself could be the sun at its zenith, its highest point in the sky.
Wow, that would make a lot more sense. It's amazing how a simple shift in perspective can totally change your interpretation of something. But what about those weird, lanky figures? Are we really going with aliens?
Not so fast. What if they're not meant to be extraterrestrials at all, but rather representations of something more internal?
Okay, I'm intrigued. Go on.
Shamanism, the practice of reaching altered states of consciousness, was a big part of many ancient cultures. What if those figures are shamans in the midst of a psychedelic experience?
Trippy. You think those ancient artists were like documenting drug trips on cave walls?
Maybe. But think about the sensations people often report from those kinds of experiences. The feeling of weightlessness, the blurring of boundaries, the sense of an expanded consciousness.
So those large heads and elongated bodies could be visual representations of those sensations.
Exactly. It's like they're trying to capture that feeling of transcendence, of leaving the physical body behind. Who needs spaceships when you can travel the cosmos from inside your own mind, right?
Right. It makes you wonder what other secrets those ancient minds were trying to tell us. Speaking of secrets, our next mystery takes us to a place where ancient history and modern-day speculation collide in a pretty epic way. Get ready to rumble with dinosaurs and temples, because we're headed to Cambodia.
Yeah.
Okay, set the scene for us. We're at the Taekaprom Temple in Cambodia. What makes this place so special?
Well, the temple itself is incredible, built back in the 12th century, but there's this one carving that's really got people talking.
Let me guess. More weird figures with big heads.
Not this time. Think a little bigger. Like, Stegosaurus, big.
Wait, seriously? There's a dinosaur carved into a 12th century temple.
That's what it looks like. It's got the plates on its back, the tail, the whole 9 yards. It's pretty detailed, too, not just some crude scratching.
Okay, now my mind is officially blown. I mean, I know we're talking ancient mysteries here, but dinosaurs and humans coexisting? That's a whole other level.
It's definitely fuel for those who believe in a young Earth, that's for sure.
Right, like the Earth is only 10,000 years old, humans and dinosaurs were hanging out together, all that. But even if we entertain that idea for a second, how did a 12th century artist in Cambodia even know what a stegosaurus looked like?
Good question. The carving itself seems to be authentic, not a modern-day hoax or anything. The weathering and the depth of the carving, it all lines up with the surrounding artwork.
So, assuming it's not a hoax, what are we looking at here? An artist with a wild imagination. Maybe they mistook another animal for a stegosaurus?
That's definitely a possibility. We tend to forget how much our understanding of the past has evolved, even in recent centuries. Back then, who knows what kind of creatures they thought roamed the Earth.
It's like that game we talked about earlier, telephone. The message gets passed down and distorted along the way. So how do we even begin to unravel what that carving really means?
Well, for starters, we can look at the bigger picture literally. Khmer art, which was big around the time this temple was built, it often features these really ornate flourishes and floral motifs.
So you're saying those stegosaurus plates, maybe they're not plates at all. Maybe they're just decorations.
Exactly. It wouldn't be unusual for them to take some artistic liberties, maybe fill in some empty space with stylized leaves or petals, kind of like those optical illusions where your brain sees something that isn't really there.
It's like we're hardwired to find patterns, make connections, even when it comes to things we don't fully understand. It's that human need to make sense of the world, even if it means inventing explanations.
Absolutely. We all do it, right? We look at the past through the lens of our own knowledge and experiences, and sometimes that leads us down some pretty interesting rabbit holes.
And that's what I love about these ancient mysteries. It's a good reminder that we don't have all the answers, and that's okay. It keeps us curious, keeps us asking questions.
It's like we're all detectives trying to piece together a puzzle that's been scattered across time. We might never have all the pieces, but it's the search that matters.
Well said. And on that note, a huge thank you to you for joining us on this journey through ancient mysteries and fringe theories. It's been a wild ride.
The pleasure was all mine. Until next time, keep exploring and keep those questions coming.
And who knows? Maybe we'll uncover the truth behind those ancient mysteries yet.